Welcome to an all-new episode of the McFuture Podcast. This is part 2 of the future of healthcare, called The 13 Economic Crimes of American Healthcare. It's targeting not just Democrats, not just Republicans, but people in the middle. People like me who want the truth but can't get it anywhere because everyone seems to have a bullshit point of view. By the time I'm done, I expect every single capitalist, innovator, entrepreneur, corporation to want to smash our current system to bits. Let's start with the first argument. My fellow capitalists, you are going to hate this one. You know the idea of letting the free market solve healthcare? Corporations, insurers, and providers innovating and competing to find a scalpel for every appendix. Turns out, the whole thing is a lie. Our entire private employer-based healthcare system was created by government, and it's still propped up by taxpayers. They say government doesn't create jobs. Well, I beg to differ. Every single regulation spawns a cottage industry of useless paper pushers or mutant entrepreneurs that are innovating around all these unintended consequences. And healthcare is no exception. In 1942, President Roosevelt froze wages to keep companies from driving up inflation during World War II because there was a labor shortage. All the men were out fighting. Instead, companies, being smarter than government, began competing on benefits, especially healthcare. The government spawned an entire industry, and then the government doubled down. In 1943, the IRS decided employer-based healthcare should be exempt from taxation. This made it cheaper to get health insurance through your job than through any other channel. And they kept year after year reinforcing this policy, long after the need was already gone. It's what we're dealing with now, all the fallout from years of bad decisions and an industry whose entire existence depends on this glitch in the matrix that we introduced through government. We give a $260 billion annual tax break for corporate Cadillac plans. I know that's one of these political buzzwords, Cadillac plans. The reality is this crazy relic from World War II created this situation where the more expensive Apple or Google makes their health insurance, the bigger their tax break. We're subsidizing their meditation and acupuncture and all these programmers who are earning 5 times what everyone else does. It's insane. Reason number 2, we're suffocating entrepreneurship and innovation. I wrote this in my book in 2011. If there was ever a case for single payer, it would be based on value lost from everybody who remains an employee instead of starting a business. And from years of working in corporate innovation, I've known so many people who just fester in jobs just because of the benefits. There's been a lot of talk about medical bankruptcy. Those stats are grossly exaggerated. What is true is people do lose income when they get sick. And that's what drives them into bankruptcy. Without the safety net, people hang on. And the whole thing just adds up to fear. Fearful people don't innovate. They don't take risks. They do just enough to keep their jobs. And companies should want them to leave as much as they crave these greener pastures. That means there's no turnover. So new employees and fresh thinking and fresh ideas aren't coming in. And I'm not even talking about age. I'm talking about people who want to be there. These prisoners of war clog the pipes, keeping more motivated replacements from moving the companies forward. So the company's not happy. The employee's not happy. Nobody's happy. And they're standing still. Studies back this up, showing that a good social welfare program makes people more entrepreneurial. And they've also shown that people who have insured spouses start more businesses than those who don't. Moving on to number 3, employer-based insurance kills small business and competition. Do you really think that Shecky's Shoe Shack is going to be able to compete with the kinds of benefits that Amazon can afford. No small business can. They can never hire the best workers as long as big companies are using health as a recruiting tool. Our system puts small businesses at a permanent competitive disadvantage, distorting who we choose to work for. NYU made tuition free for their medical students. And one of the driving thoughts there is by not saddling people with all that debt, they'll be free to choose the types of medicine that actually helps people instead of saying, hey, I'm just going to work on breasts because that's more lucrative and that's how I'm going to be able to pay off my bills and set up my family and buy a boat. The same logic applies here. You have to take this perverse incentive out, which is killing small business. Number 4, why the hell are we forcing American companies into the healthcare business? Foreign competitors don't have to waste their time and hours managing a distraction that has nothing to do with their business. It makes every single US company less competitive. Why? Because they're dedicating financial and people resources to something that is not their business. And it also forces their employees to sit there screwing around with health plans and HSAs and FSAs and deductibles and reimbursements instead of fending off Amazon or Google or something else. It's this huge waste of human potential, just like our tax system and watching esports. But okay. Number 5. Why am I screaming? The more global we become, talent can go anywhere, especially people who have white-collar jobs. They can go to Canada, France, Chile, and the UK. All of those countries are offering cash and Coke to entrepreneurs. All right, maybe not the Coke, but mostly cash. People want to gamble with their careers, not their lives. So they're going to choose countries that will resuscitate them if their blood clots while coding in their Aeron chairs. Number 6, we're almost halfway there. Employer-based coverage depresses wages and job creation. If insurance didn't go up 20% each year, employees could pocket an extra few grand and companies could afford to hire more workers. Plus, this type of coverage is a very sneaky source of discrimination. This is something no one talks about because it costs more money to insure women and older workers. Guess what? That creates an economic incentive to prefer hiring men and then kick them out when somebody spots a gray hair or an incorrect pronoun. Bottom line is we're creating discrimination and hurting people's wages. Number 7, healthcare is a parasite. Most Americans have no savings and wages have been flat since Nixon played Nixon on TV. If one critical expense, healthcare, grows at 15 to 20% a year, but other prices only grow by 2 to 3%, that's money that's not being spent on every other product and service. Healthcare is stealing sales from every other industry. They're stealing vacations from you because of how inefficient our system is. You might say, well, Steve, universal care disproportionately burdens boat owners. Yeah, maybe. It also swaps their idle savings for active spending by everybody else. This floods billions of new dollars into the economy to buy stuff from the companies rich people own and invest in. So it's a win-win. Number 8, the malignant middleman. Insurers profit by not paying doctors. So the more they can delay, the less they pay, the more they get to keep. They profit from being administrators, and that has a cascading effect. Doctors have to hire a bunch of people to do paperwork and collections. Employers have to hire a bunch of admins. So all these administrative costs start to spiral out of control, and they eat away at the only relationship that actually matters between the patient and the provider. There's this one chart. It shows the growth in the number of physicians, which is kind of a flattish line, then the growth in administrators flying off the charts. The minute you see this, you're going to punch a hole in your monitor. The reason this creates out of control costs is you're paying for 3 levels of increases. You're paying for normal inflation, providers raising their prices each year, and the profit margin of this worthless administrator. Number 9. Look, I'm going to say 2 words. I know they're going to put your unborn grandkids to sleep. Just bear with me. Risk pools. Our healthcare system is as good at spreading risk as the Taliban is at spreading women's rights. Instead of a massive group of young, healthy people offsetting the expense of old, sick people, we have all these little pools that are fractured by insurer and employer. They're completely inefficient. Most of these pools only feature young and healthy people. The people who have the ability to work are typically younger and healthier. And the rest, the old, the sick, the disabled, the chronically ill, Walmart workers, all of the costliest cases are left for taxpayers to take care of. They're all on Medicare or Medicaid. The icing on this shit pie, wait, do pies have icing or is that cake? Anyway, you get the idea. Even private insurers can't make the math work. Insurers are starting to consolidate so they can start building in some of these efficiencies. They're basically building this giant, crappy single-payer system, one that gives taxpayers the biggest bills and none of the benefits. Number 10, poor health costs U.S. employers about $576 billion a year. About 39% of that is from illness or lost productivity or absenteeism or binge watching Ellen. It's basically why employers subsidize insurance and snack drawers to keep us working. Sick workers do bad work, and then 28.5 million uninsured. A lot of times they do no work. They don't look for jobs or contribute to the economy, and medicine can get them back in the game, working, paying taxes, surfing porn at lunch, whatever it is that they do. We're crippling a productive part of the workforce by not offering them a way to get back in. Number 11, when you don't pay for something directly, you use too much of it. If people who live in Manhattan had to pay for water by the gallon instead of getting it free, buried inside their monthly rent, do you think they'd use more or less water? Now, if you said less, would you also guess that they'd be about as clean in both cases? Or would they let themselves degenerate into some undateable hobo funk? Unlikely. Same with restaurant bills. If 90% of your restaurant bill was covered by a fixed monthly payment, do you think you'd get that extra slice of tiramisu? Hell yeah, you would. And another leg of lamb. Eat the waiter. He's 90% covered too, in hot sauce. According to the Institute of Medicine, $765 billion was overspent on healthcare in 2009 just from overutilization, just from using too much. And it's all because someone else is paying. That's 30% of total healthcare spending. Do you want more proof? I know you do, because that's why you're here. Indians in India, on average, bear 60 to 70% of healthcare costs out of pocket. Even if you adjust for the cost of living difference, they pay 1/5 of what we do here in the US. Even here in the US, we have a market that already operates on market principles. It's called cosmetic surgery. By the way, it's how I got my thick, lustrous hair. Everything is paid out of pocket and totally unregulated. And guess what? Since 1998, cosmetic surgery prices only went up by 1.8% a year. That's way less than healthcare, which is almost 6%. And at the same time, the technology keeps improving. 20 years ago, you practically had to dismember Pamela Anderson to install breast implants. Today, you can slide them in through Nicki Minaj's belly button. 0 scars and way more hits. we can have innovation and stable prices. Number 12, rising prices are a massive lie. Yeah, our payments are going up, but the real costs are going down. It's just buried in how our system works. First of all, the healthcare we buy today is nothing like what we used to buy in the 50s or 70s or 90s. It's way more advanced. It covers more diseases, more procedures, more technologies, mental health, and drugs. Ah, sweet, beautiful drugs. Who would you rather have operate on you? Dr. House or Dr. Huxtable? Exactly. Plus, the price of every single procedure is 100% fake. They're completely made up by hospitals and doctors just to max out insurance reimbursement. No insurer pays $30,000 for an appendectomy. But if some poor uninsured sucker has the misfortune of getting wheeled into a hospital with a bursting appendix, that sucker is going to get billed retail, a price he didn't have a chance to negotiate. And these prices are so obscene, you're going to want to grab a butter knife and remove it yourself. Nobody steal that idea. I'm coming out with the service soon. The average bill is $30,000 to $40,000. You know what Medicare actually reimburses? A quarter of that. They pay $8,000 to $10,000 max on a $40,000 bill. Wall Street Journal did this great comparison. They showed how much an MRI costs in all these different situations. The fake price, or it's called the charge master price, lists it at $2,844. If you're on Blue Cross is paying $617. If you're paying in cash, you're paying $695. If you're on United Healthcare, they're paying almost $2,000. It's insanity. And Cigna did an even better job. They got it down to $342. Guess who won this race? Medicare. How much do you think? That's right, $335 for Medicare. We have a mess on our hands. When you look at these cash prices, most of them are staying flat or going down. But because none of us are shopping retail, the providers aren't pressured to drop prices or show us the real prices others are paying or successfully negotiated. This is from MIT. This is a quote. Why should a patient fully covered by health insurance worry about whether that expensive hip implant is really any better than the alternative costing half as much? And for that matter, physicians rarely, if ever, know the cost of what they prescribe and are often shocked when they do find out. Plus, only 0.5% of these new medical technologies are better than existing ones that cost way less. And the same thing applies to drugs. Not only are they overprescribed, many of the expensive name brand drugs are just combos of 2 or more generics. It's like charging $5 for a Starbucks latte when the ingredients, water, beans, milk, cost 4 cents. Oh, wait a minute. That is how it works. Number 13. The biggest reason our system is doomed is because it's regressive. It's backwards as hell. I can't curse because you guys are listening to this blasting in your office. Most of you dear, sweet, lovely saints that listen to this podcast get your insurance from your employers. But that era is almost over. You just don't know it yet. You are the walking dead. The economy is automating fast. More and more people are getting rattled loose from traditional employment. And they're being pushed into the gig economy or freelancing, whatever the hell you want to call driving an Uber. If you look at the number of filings for 1099s, which is the form you fill out when you're an independent contractor for taxes, it's been spiking. It is up dramatically compared to regular tax returns. Already 1 out of 5 Americans works as a contractor. By the time your kids listen to this episode, they'll be in a self-driving Uber on their way to the nearest vegan yoga safe space to win voting rights for cauliflower. By then, it'll be too late. not for cauliflower, but for jobs. Few will have them. That's a great thing once we figure out how to organize ourselves and share in these spoils of victory. That also means relying on jobs to provide insurance is nothing short of insanity. That's it for this episode. Join me for episode 3 called Would You Trust a Schizophrenic? I'm Steve Faktor for the McFuture. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this, share it with others, review it on iTunes. It's extremely helpful. See you next week.